Apply. In every corner of history, behind the towering castles, gilded crowns, and grand thrones, lies a world of mystery, an untold story of power, betrayal, apply, and secrets hidden in the shadows of time. These were not just rulers, they were living legends whose decisions shaped empires and whose whispers could change the fate of millions. Apply. From the iron will of kings who built walls that still stand today, apply to queens whose beauty masked deadly plots. What we uncover tonight is not in textbooks, it's in the walls of history itself, a wall built with power, ambition, apply. And secrets the world was never meant to know. Behind the wall of history lies a name that echoes through time, King Nebuchadnezzar II. To many, he is remembered as the ruler of Babylon, apply, the great conqueror, the man who turned a desert kingdom into the jewel of Mesopotamia. But hidden in the shadows of his reign is a mystery that continues to haunt historians, apply, archaeologists and dreamers alike, the enigma of the Hanging Gardens of Babylon, a wonder so magnificent it was said to rival the heavens themselves, apply, yet so elusive that some claim it may never have existed at all. Imagine this: a desert empire blistering under the relentless sun, apply, yet within its heart stood a paradise, terraces rising high above the city walls, covered in trees, blooming with exotic flowers, and flowing with cascading waterfalls. Apply. Ancient writers described gardens that defied nature itself, built not by chance but by the ambition of a king. According to legend, apply, Nebuchadnezzar ordered their creation as a gift of love for his queen, Amidus of Media. She missed the lush green mountains of her homeland, and so the king, apply, unwilling to see sorrow in her eyes, decided to bring the mountains to Babylon. In doing so, he created not just a garden, apply, but an eternal story, a symbol of devotion carved into the stones of time. But here lies the mystery. These gardens were listed among the 7 wonders of the ancient world, apply, celebrated by Greek historians like Strabo and Philo of Byzantium. Yet curiously, no Babylonian texts, no clay tablets, apply. No royal inscriptions from Nebuchadnezzar's era mention them at all. How could a wonder so breathtaking, so massive, escape the records of the very people who lived beneath its shade? Apply. Some argue the gardens were not in Babylon at all, but hundreds of miles away in Nineveh, built by the Assyrian king Sennacherib. Others believe they were nothing more than a legend, apply, born of poetic exaggeration and ancient hearsay. Still, archaeologists continue to search. Excavations of Babylon reveal massive walls, temples, apply, and palaces, but no definitive trace of the fabled gardens. And yet fragments of aqueducts and advanced irrigation systems whisper that perhaps the impossible was real. Apply. For how else could such a garden flourish in the heart of a desert? If not for engineering genius centuries ahead of its time, the Hanging Gardens represent more than beauty. Apply. They symbolize humanity's eternal struggle against nature. A king who would not bow to the limits of the desert. A ruler who commanded rivers to flow where none existed. To his people, apply. Nebuchadnezzar was not just a monarch, he was a figure who could bend the world itself to his will. And whether or not the gardens truly stood in Babylon, apply, their story reflects the grandeur of an era when rulers dreamed beyond the horizon, building not only walls of stone but walls of legend. Even today, apply, we stand divided between history and myth. Were the Hanging Gardens a true marvel lost to time's cruel decay, or were they nothing more than a tale told around ancient fires? Apply, a mirage of the imagination. The truth may remain forever buried beneath the sands of Iraq, but the story of Nebuchadnezzar and his queen, of a paradise in the desert, apply, continues to bloom in our minds, reminding us that sometimes the most powerful walls of history are not those we can touch, but those we can never prove. And within the palace gates, apply, where shadows of power stretched longer than the daylight itself, there stood a queen who would forever reshape the destiny of her nation, Elizabeth I of England. To the world, apply, she was the Virgin Queen, a monarch draped in shimmering gowns, her face powdered pale like marble, her fairy red hair crowned with jewels. Apply, but behind the glittering mask of royalty lay a woman bound by secrets, navigating a storm of betrayals, conspiracies, and impossible choices. Apply, her life was no fairy tale. It was a battlefield one fought not with swords, but with wit, courage, and sacrifice. Elizabeth was born into turbulence, apply, the daughter of King Henry and his ill-fated queen, Anne Boleyn. Her very existence was shadowed by scandal. At just 2 years old, she lost her mother to the executioner's blade, apply, and in the eyes of many, her legitimacy was always questioned. She grew up as both princess and prisoner, heir to a throne she might never sit upon. In these early years, apply, she learned a vital lesson: trust no one, for the walls of palaces hold ears sharper than blades. When she finally rose to power in 1558, apply, the kingdom she inherited was fractured and bleeding. Religious wars tore at its heart. Enemies circled from abroad, and within her own court, whispers of rebellion grew louder each day. Apply, yet Elizabeth, a woman in a man's world, stood unshaken. She wore her solitude like armor, famously declaring that she would never marry. Apply. Whether this vow was truly about independence or simply a brilliant political move remains debated even today. By refusing to take a husband, apply, she denied foreign kings control of her crown and silenced ambitious English lords who longed to rule through her. But this decision came at a cost. Behind closed doors, apply, she wrestled with loneliness, torn between personal desire and the demands of the throne. History remembers her as cold, untouchable, but her letters, filled with tenderness and longing, apply, reveal a queen who was deeply human. Rumors swirled about secret romances, most notably with Robert Dudley, her lifelong companion. Some believed they were lovers, apply. Others claimed their bond was only of loyalty and friendship. Whatever the truth, Elizabeth ensured the world would never know for certain. Mystery was her greatest weapon, apply, and she wielded it with unmatched brilliance. Her reign was a constant dance with danger. Apply. Conspiracies like the Rodolphi plot and the Babington plot sought to dethrone her and place her cousin Mary, Queen of Scots, on the throne. For years, apply, Elizabeth hesitated to act against Mary, torn by blood ties and the weight of moral conscience. Yet when evidence surfaced that Mary had conspired against her, apply, Elizabeth made the most agonizing decision of her life. Apply. Sending Mary's death warrant was not just an act of survival. It was a moment that etched Elizabeth's name in the unforgiving stone of history as a queen who chose duty over kinship. Apply. And still, she was not done. In 1588, the mightiest empire in Europe, the Spanish Armada, set sail to crush England. Outnumbered and outmatched, apply, Elizabeth stood before her soldiers at Tilbury clad in armor, declaring that she had the heart and stomach of a king. It was more than words, it was fire. Against impossible odds, apply. The English forces triumphed and Elizabeth's legend was sealed. She had defended her crown, her people, and her vision of England as a rising power. Yet, for all her victories, apply. Elizabeth died alone, leaving behind no heirs. Her refusal to marry meant the Tudor dynasty ended with her, but her legacy endured in ways she may never have imagined. Apply. She transformed England into a global force, a land of culture, exploration, and resilience. Shakespeare's plays flourished under her reign. Apply. Voyages set sail that mapped the edges of the known world, and the identity of England itself was forever reshaped. Elizabeth's untold secret is this: she was not just a queen of power, apply, but of sacrifice. She gave up love, family, and peace of mind to embody her nation. And though her heart may have longed for more, she chose to be remembered not as a wife or mother, apply, but as a ruler who stood alone, unbroken against the tide of history. Apply. But what no one tells you is that the greatest empire the world had ever seen was carved not by kings in gilded halls, but by a man who began with nothing. His name was Genghis Khan. Apply. The thunder of the steppes, the storm that rolled across Asia and into Europe, reshaping the map of civilization forever. His empire stretched farther than the Romans could dream. Apply. Greater than Alexander's conquest, binding lands and people under one rule. Yet, for all his unmatched power, the greatest mystery of his life is not how he lived, but how he died. Apply. And where he lies buried. Genghis Khan was more than a warrior. He was an architect of nations. He united warring tribes of Mongolia into one force. Apply. Instilling discipline and loyalty where chaos once ruled. His armies rode with unmatched ferocity, their bows striking fear into the hearts of seasoned soldiers. Apply. Their strategies outsmarting kingdoms thought invincible. Cities fell before him, empires crumbled beneath his hooves. Apply, and the very word Mongol became a whisper of dread across continents. And yet, for all this glory, apply, Genghis Khan left the world shrouded in silence when it came to his own final resting place. According to legend, when the great Khan died in 1227, will apply, his body was carried back to Mongolia under the strictest secrecy. The funeral procession was said to have been guarded fiercely, every witness silenced, every possible clue erased. Apply. Some tales say the soldiers who attended his burial slaughtered anyone who crossed their path, ensuring no outsider could know the route. Others claim that once the grave was dug, apply, the soldiers themselves were killed, and then their executioners too, leaving behind only silence and the earth that swallowed him whole. The secrecy did not end there. Apply, stories tell of a river diverted to cover his tomb, erasing every trace of its existence. Others speak of forests planted atop his grave, nature itself enlisted to keep his secret safe. Apply, over 8 centuries have passed, yet no historian, no explorer, no archaeologist has ever found definitive evidence of his burial site. Apply. The tomb of the man who conquered the known world remains perhaps the most enduring unsolved riddle in human history. Why such secrecy? Apply. Was it to prevent his enemies from desecrating his body, or to maintain his image as a godlike figure, one who transcended death? In Mongol tradition, apply, the dead were often honored with sky burials, their remains left to the elements. But Genghis Khan was no ordinary man, and his legacy demanded more than ritual. Apply. His people revered him as a force of destiny, and perhaps they believed his spirit must remain undisturbed, hidden from the eyes of men. Modern explorers have searched tirelessly. Apply. From satellite scans of the Mongolian steppe to expeditions in the remote Khenti Mountains, countless theories abound. Apply. Some say the tomb may lie beneath the sacred Birken Kaldon mountain, a place he himself declared holy. Others believe it is hidden in plain sight. Apply. Its treasures and secrets buried beneath unmarked soil, waiting for the world to stumble upon it by chance. Yet the Mongolian people themselves often resist these searches. Apply. Guarding his memory as fiercely as their ancestors did, believing that disturbing his rest would bring misfortune. And perhaps that is the real power of this mystery. Genghis Khan, Apply, a man who brought empires to their knees, still holds the world captive, not through armies, but through the silence of his grave. His tomb has become a monument not of stone, Apply, but of absence, a wall of history that no one has yet broken through. Even in death, he remains untouchable, hidden beyond the reach of time, his secrets locked in the soil of Mongolia. Apply. So the legend lives on. The great Khan, whose name once shook the earth, now rules in mystery. And as long as his grave remains unfound, the world will forever wonder. Apply. What lies beneath the earth that swallowed the man who conquered it all? Carved in the stone of time is the story of a queen whose name still stirs both wonder and intrigue, Cleopatra. Apply. To most of the world, she is remembered as the temptress of the Nile, a woman whose beauty brought powerful men to their knees. But history, when stripped of myths and whispers, Apply, reveals something far greater. Cleopatra was not merely a queen of allure. She was a strategist, a diplomat, a ruler whose intellect was as sharp as the blade of any sword. Apply. Behind the painted portraits and romanticized tales lies the untold truth of a woman who dared to bend the fate of empires. Born into the Ptolemaic dynasty, Apply, Cleopatra inherited not just a throne, but a kingdom on the brink of collapse. Egypt was rich, but it was also vulnerable, a land watched hungrily by Rome's expanding power. Apply. From the moment she ascended to the throne, she faced more than palace politics. She faced survival. Unlike her predecessors, Cleopatra did not rely solely on heritage or tradition. Apply. She wielded something more powerful, her mind. Fluent in multiple languages, she could speak directly to her people without interpreters, the only Ptolemaic ruler to do so. Apply. She understood economics, science, and diplomacy, using every tool at her disposal to strengthen Egypt's fragile hold on independence. Apply. Her alliance with Julius Caesar was not born of mere romance, but of necessity. When her throne was threatened by rival factions, Apply. Cleopatra's meeting with Caesar was a gamble of survival. Legend tells us she smuggled herself into his presence, wrapped in a carpet, a gesture that has echoed through centuries. Apply. Whether embellished or not, the truth remains, she secured her position beside one of the most powerful men in Rome, not as a submissive figure, Apply, but as a partner in politics and strategy. Through Caesar, she regained her throne, stabilized her rule, and ensured Egypt's sovereignty for a time. Apply. But her story did not end with Caesar. After his assassination, Cleopatra's fate became entwined with another Roman giant, Mark Antony. Apply. Their union has often been painted as a tale of love and passion, yet beneath the romance lay cold political calculation. With Antony, Apply, Cleopatra sought to safeguard Egypt's future against the looming shadow of Rome. Together, they forged a partnership that was as much about empire as it was about affection. Apply. Commanding fleets, raising armies, and challenging the might of Octavian, the man who would become Rome's first emperor, it was a gamble that ended in tragedy. Apply. The Battle of Actium in 31 BC sealed their fate as Octavian's forces crushed Antony and Cleopatra's navy, abandoned, surrounded, and facing inevitable defeat. Apply. The queen chose her own end rather than humiliation. According to legend, she allowed a venomous asp to strike her, her final act one of defiance. Whether by snakebite or poison, Apply. Her death became the closing chapter of Egypt's independence as Rome absorbed the Nile's kingdom into its empire. And yet Cleopatra's story has never faded. For centuries, Apply, her image has been molded and remolded, shaped by poets, playwrights, and politicians. Was she a seductress who ensnared great men, or a visionary queen who fought to preserve her nation? Apply. Perhaps she was both. What cannot be denied is that she defied the expectations of her time, standing as a woman of intelligence and power in a world ruled by men. Apply. Her untold secret lies not in the perfumes, jewels, or whispered tales of beauty, but in her cunning ability to survive where few could. Cleopatra transformed alliances into weapons. Apply. Turned love into strategy and wielded her intellect like a crown. Carved in the stone of time, her legacy is not simply that of a queen who ruled Egypt, Apply, but of a woman who challenged the greatest empire on earth and whose shadow still lingers on the sands of the Nile, a reminder that history is shaped not only by conquerors, Apply, but by those bold enough to resist them. Hidden in the chambers of power is the story of a king who transformed himself into a living sun. Louis XIV of France, the Sun King, apply, reigned longer than any other monarch in European history, and in his rule, he left behind not only a nation forever changed, apply, but a palace that stands as both his masterpiece and his prison, Versailles. To the world, it is a symbol of beauty and elegance, a place where golden halls stretch endlessly, apply, where mirrors reflect chandeliers blazing with light. But behind the glittering walls lies the untold truth. Versailles was not merely a palace. It was a weapon crafted with purpose, apply, designed to bind an entire nobility under the weight of one man's power. Louis ascended to the throne as a child, thrust into a world of intrigue and rebellion, apply. His early years were marked by chaos. The Fronde, a series of uprisings by nobles who defied royal authority, taught him a lesson that would never leave his heart. A power must never be shared. From that moment, Louis resolved to rule not just as a king, but as the embodiment of France itself. Alo tat, apply, chest moi, he is said to have declared, "I am the state," and he meant it. Versailles became the heart of that declaration. Apply. What began as a modest hunting lodge was transformed into the grandest palace in Europe, a marvel of architecture and ambition. Apply. It was not built only to impress foreign dignitaries or dazzle visitors. It was built to control. By drawing the nobility out of Paris and into the gilded cages of Versailles, apply, Louis stripped them of their independence. Here, in corridors lined with gold, the nobles competed not for power but for the king's attention, apply, squabbling over the smallest honors, who might hand him his gloves, who might stand closest to his table. By turning ceremony into obsession, apply. Louis reduced once proud lords into courtiers dependent on his favor. Versailles was not their playground, it was their leash. But the cost of this splendor was immense. Apply, France blowed under the weight of the Sun King's wars, and its people groaned beneath crushing taxes. Yet within the walls of Versailles, life sparkled with endless feasts, masquerades, apply, ballots, and displays of magnificence. Louis believed that grandeur itself was a form of rule, that by dazzling his subjects, by surrounding himself with light, apply, he could obscure the shadows of discontent, and for decades it worked. The palace became not only a royal residence, but a symbol of absolute monarchy, apply, where every stone declared the supremacy of the crown. Still, beneath the glitter, secrets lingered. Versailles was a theater, and Louis was its star, apply, but behind the scenes were whispers of scandal and intrigue. Lovers, mistresses, and rivalries flourished in hidden chambers. Courtiers plotted in hushed tones, apply, while ministers balanced loyalty with ambition, and Louis himself, though powerful beyond measure, was bound to the very palace he had created. Apply, Versailles consumed him as much as it consumed France. The halls of mirrors reflected not only his glory, but his solitude, a reminder that even a sun king must live surrounded by shadows. Apply, in time, the brilliance of Versailles became its curse. The grandeur that once dazzled Europe became a symbol of excess, a reminder of a monarchy detached from its suffering people. Apply. Long after Louis's death, when the fires of revolution swept through France, Versailles stood as a monument to a world that had crumbled. Yet, even then, apply, its walls was whispered the story of a king who turned architecture into dominance, ceremony into control, and light into power. Louis XIV's untold secret lies in this paradox. Apply, he was both master and prisoner of the palace he created. Hidden in the chambers of power, behind the glitter and the gold, apply, lies the truth of a man who sought to embody the sun itself, burning so brightly that even centuries later, his light still blinds us. Apply, even as we wonder what darkness it tried to conceal. The secret begins with this, the story of a man who dreamed of ruling not just in life, but in death. Emperor Qin Shi Huang, apply, the first emperor of a unified China, was a figure of ambition unlike any the world had ever seen. He forged an empire out of chaos, apply, binding warring states into a single nation through force, vision, and unyielding determination. But the greatest monument to his power was not the walls he built, apply, nor the laws he enforced. It was the tomb he left behind, a burial site so vast, so mysterious, that more than 2,000 years later it remains sealed, apply, guarding its secrets beneath layers of earth and silence. When Qin Shi Huang ascended to the throne, he declared himself more than a king. He was an emperor destined to rule eternally. Apply, obsessed with immortality, he scoured the lands for elixirs and potions, sending explorers to search for magical islands where death could be conquered. Yet, ironically, apply, the very potions he consumed may have hastened his end, for they contained mercury, a substance both toxic and symbolic of eternity. Perhaps it was poison that killed him, apply, but it was vision that made him immortal. His mausoleum, discovered in the 20th century near Xi'an, is not just a tomb, but an underground kingdom. Apply. At its gates stands one of the most astonishing archaeological discoveries of all time, the Terracotta army. Thousands of life-sized warriors, each with unique faces, stand in silent ranks guarding their emperor in eternal vigilance. Horses, chariots, and weapons carved with exquisite detail surround them. As if ready to march into battle at a moment's notice. These statues are not merely art, they are soldiers carved from earth. Protectors who ensure that Qin Shi Huang's rule would continue beyond the grave. But the true heart of the tomb remains untouched. Ancient texts describe rivers of liquid mercury flowing through the burial chamber, designed to mimic the waterways of his empire. The emperor sought to carry the world he conquered into the afterlife, crafting a miniature universe sealed beneath the soil. Modern scientific surveys have indeed detected unusually high levels of mercury in the ground around the site, lending chilling credibility to the legends. It is said that palaces, treasures and priceless artifacts lie hidden within, locked away in chambers that no human eyes have seen for over 2 millennia. Yet the tomb remains closed. Why? Because to open it would risk destruction of its contents. The technology to excavate such a delicate site safely does not yet exist. The chamber may hold wonders beyond imagination, but a single mistake could turn them to dust. And so the emperor's secrets remain intact, guarded by earth, by time, and by his silent army above. The mystery deepens with the emperor's intent. Was this tomb built out of fear, a desperate attempt to conquer death, or was it an act of hubris? A declaration that even the grave could not diminish his rule. Perhaps both. For Qin Shi Huang was a man consumed by control. He standardized currency, weights, and measures. He unified writing, ensuring that his empire spoke in one script. He ordered the Great Wall's beginnings to defend his realm. Everything he touched was drawn into the orbit of his authority, and his tomb was no different. It was his final empire, sealed eternal, indestructible. And so it stands today, a mountain of secrets buried beneath China's soil, waiting, perhaps, for the day the world is ready to uncover them. The Terracotta army has given us only a glimpse, a whisper of the grandeur hidden below. The true chamber remains unseen, its treasures undisturbed, its mercury rivers still flowing in silence. The emperor sleeps, his ambitions unbroken, his secret still beyond reach. The secret begins with this Qin Shi Huang, may have died over 2,000 years ago, but his shadow still lingers. His tomb is not just a resting place, it is a reminder that some walls of history are built not to crumble, but to endure. Guarding mysteries that time itself has chosen not yet to reveal. History is a wall built not only with stone, but with secrets, whispers buried beneath centuries, waiting to be uncovered. From kings who built wonders that may never have existed, to queens who traded love for survival, to emperors who dreamed of ruling beyond the grave, each story reminds us that power always leaves behind a mystery. But these walls of time are endless, and beyond them lie countless more secrets, legends still waiting to be told. If you've been captivated by these untold truths, then join us on this journey. Like this video, share it with those who love history, subscribe to the channel, and let us know in the comments which mystery you want us to unlock next. Your voice will decide the next wall of history we break through together.